Good morning, everyone, or g'day from down under here. It's what is it, 11 o'clock here. I'm here earlier this morning. Just read a really interesting article about some Sigma lenses. So I thought I'd discuss that with you and then see if you were interested in the discussion as well. G'day, Tony. How you going, mate? Good to see you here. Yeah, so I'm going to do this and then I'll pop down for my morning coffee actually after I've done this. So I don't think it's going to go for too long, but it's an interesting discussion that I wanted to go over with you, that some of the statements that have been made. And it's quite exciting, actually. So I'm just looking at the chat, just watching people starting to come on board. So please say hi. If you are coming in a little bit later, just skip to where I show the logo and we'll start it from there. So we've got SRM Media here, Video Masters here, Tom's here as well, Mike's here, Tony's here. Refresh my memory, what site did you use for sound? Oh, is that for the music? Was it Tony? I'll just bring it up for you so I can show you. File, new window, where are we? Open a new window. It's this one. So it's let me just log in. And I'll switch sites so you can see, Tony, just to see what it is. It's this, where are we? It's this one here. It's called Epidemic Sound, I think is the one that I use. And that's the one I've really found works fantastic. And I'm not sponsored by them, I pay for it. But you can do a YouTube subscription through it, which is really good, which means that you won't get flagged with issues, and they have a great sort of albums and sound effects and stuff like that, and I really recommend this, and it's fantastic. I do have a couple that I use. I also use, that's the one I mostly use, but let me just check this one too, because I think I also use Audio Blocks as well, and that's another one that I pay for. They're both really good. I do prefer the Epidemic Sound one though, because I've found sometimes if I use Audio Blocks, even though if you get a copyright strike on YouTube, there's a process you've got to go through with Audio Blocks, whereas you don't get that one with Epidemic Sound. It works really, really fantastic. So anyway, that's those two sites. Let me just come back to the chat just to see who else is here. Vic's here, BMCP's here as well, Ariel's here, David Johnson's here, good to see you, Altric, yeah, the hardest working man in photography, the Panda Photographer's here, Sigma. G'day mate, how you going? Altric Wilson's here as well. So I'm not going to, like I said, this one's not going to be such a long one today, but I will leave it open for a bit of a chat at the end, because then I want to get down actually and have a coffee. But what I'm going to talk to you about is this article, and guys, I will come back to the chat at the end, so if you want to get my attention, just put the @DavidOsler like I am De Brown's done there, just so you can come back. But basically, let's have a look at this announcement, because it's really interesting what he's actually said. So this is the, I think he's the, probably, I think he's the manager or director there or something. And it just says in here, what's interesting though is some of the comments that he's actually made about what they're going to offer in the FE mount lenses. And this was something similar that I discussed. I did put a full sort of more of a discussion about this in one of my early videos. So you can go back and look at that if you're interested in where Sigma are going to go. But this is really quite an exciting thing for Sony. And there's some really interesting ones that I want to show you in there. But I want to show you this first comment first. Because he says in here, let me just move my little logo. Oh, hang on, how do I get that there, I think? No, I'll just move it there. He says in here that the native FE mount lens autofocus is faster than what can be achieved with the MC11 adapter. This is because what we did was optimize the communication for Sony. It's faster, smoother, and we were able to utilize Sony protocols in the lenses. So what he's saying here, and this is the interesting thing, I've had a lot of people, I notice in chats going on about saying they've just welded on the adapter onto the end of the lens. And, you know, why would you bother? But looking at what he's said here, it's I think that's not just the case. I think these lenses are going to work faster. Now, they already work pretty well, or very well actually, if you are dealing with normal stills. Apparently, from what I've seen, if you go into video, they may be lacking a little bit. Now, this may have got around that. Now, I'm not saying it has, but clearly what he's saying is here, though, that it does faster than what it can with the MC11 adapter. And like I said, I've used the MC11 with Canon lenses in the local camera store, and I was actually amazed at how well they worked. So clearly, if that's going to be better, and he's saying it is going to be better, these lenses actually are going to be really good. And there's a couple of lenses that particularly interest me that I may look at later on down the line, is the 135, and also the 70mm macro, I think was one of the others. But also one that I'm a bit confused about is the 105mm, I think it was, that is meant to be stunning with bokeh. So I wouldn't even mind to have a look at that. The only issue with that lens is it's a little bit close to my 85 Batis, but I'd like to try it just to sort of see what you get. Because 105mm at 105 at 1.8 probably will be beautiful to use. That is a massive lens though, so you're paying for that side of it, I think, to get that. But that could be one that may interest me just to bring out as a specialist lens. Although I must admit the 135 does interest me occasionally to get out as a specialist lens. I'm not interested in lugging these heavy lenses around all the time, but it is something that I might consider, like I said, to use for a special occasion or something like that. But if they do focus much better, that is a really interesting thing. And this is where I was saying to you that it's actually a really exciting time for Sony, really. So he's talking about that. So it's faster, smoother, and we were able to utilize pseudo communication protocols in the lenses. So that's a real plus. So that's the first statement that he's actually said there. Let's go down to statement number 2. And basically what he said here is about the possible size advantage of designing FE E-mount lenses from the ground up for Sony only. He said the wide-angle lenses would be smaller, yes, but any lens larger than 35mm, he's saying that they'd roughly be the same size. So I don't think what he's basically saying is here that no matter how they redesign this, they're going to be similar lens sizes. So that's an interesting comment that he's put up here as well. Question number 3, he said, what about the possibility of making new lenses designed for Sony FE only? And he says there that we are working on lenses designed from scratch for Sony E-mount. This is just the beginning. So again, you're starting to see that Sony is being more and more supported. And it's interesting how this is all coming out just lately with the A7R3 release and the A7 III. I think they're starting to change the whole game, to be totally honest. And number 4, he said here, what about new APS-C lenses? And he says, we're going to release another APS-C lens for Sony E-mount this year, probably around Photokina, and I think that's September, I think. We need to see what the response from the customers is like. If it's good, we'll continue development. So clearly, if there's a need for those lenses, they will still develop it. Now remember, there's an awful lot of those cameras sold, so that's also an interesting thing. I'm not quite 100% sure what's going to happen in that marketplace though, because I have been monitoring a lot of sites selling and things like that with camera gear, and there seems to be an awful lot of people selling their A6500s and moving up to the A7 IIIs. And to be honest, that's what I'd recommend if you have the money to do it. Because I really think that is the game-changing camera. And I can see a lot of people selling their A6 300, their A6 500, and moving over to the full frame. If you're in that marketplace at the moment to buy that camera, the A6 500, I would honestly recommend not to do that and go full frame. Try and save up a little bit more and get the A7 III. So I'm not sure what's going to happen to that sort of marketplace in the coming 12 months to 2 years. So it's going to be interesting to see which way that actually goes. But let's continue. But either way, they're saying they're going to support it. But this one is even more interesting because I thought, whoa, this is really interesting. And this was one I wanted to talk to you about. So it says here that Sigma also offers mount conversion and I didn't know that this was even possible, but this is going to be done. It says if you own Canon EF mount versions of any of those lenses, we can convert your lens to Sony E mount version for a charge. They're not saying what that is, but that's really interesting. So if you didn't want to do that MC11, they'll convert it for you, which probably then would have those advantages that they're talking about up the top. And they're saying, and if a user decides to go back to Canon EF mount in the future, we can even reconvert the lens back again. So, whoa, I mean, this is incredible. I thought, wow, when I read that. So, I'm telling you, Canon, I'll be switching. Also, it says here that Sigma also, to sum up, don't worry, folks, Sigma will make lenses designed for Sony FE mount cameras and new APS-C E-mount lenses he is talking about, and it could be the new 51.4. Oh, and obviously there's some prices down here that I'll just go through with you just so you can sort of check. That the Sigma 14 1.8 is $1,599, and you can pre-order those at B&H Photo and Adorama. The Sigma 20mm 1.4 is $899. And that's also both B&H and Adorama. The Sigma 24mm 1.4 is $849. The Sigma 35 1.4 is $899. That's the lens that I used to own when I had my Nikon camera, and that lens was brilliant. These are art lenses, so they are really high quality lenses, and they are a step up from what you'd get for Samyang and these other lenses. They definitely are a step up. So if you can afford to go up to that sort of range, even though you're going to get that little bit bigger because of the flange distance, I probably still would go for these rather than going for something like the Samyang ones. But that's a personal opinion that I believe. So the Sigma 35 1.4 was stunning. It was a gorgeous lens. You've also got the Sigma 50mm 1.4 for $949. The Sigma 85 f1.4 is $1,199, and the Sigma 135 1.8 is $1,399. That sort of blows the baddest out of the water if you look at that price range and you're getting a 1.8 lens. So if you were in that marketplace of looking at that, unless you want that really lightweight, I would probably think the Sigma would be way heavier. But you're also getting a 1.8 lens as against a 2.8 lens. So really there's no competition in that sector if you're dealing for having to shoot at 1.8. And I do love shooting wide open. So that's the thing for me. I do actually really adore shooting wide open. So I'm going to open up to the chat to let me know what you think about those questions. Does that excite you being a Sony shooter? Because I actually think... Oh, there's no price there for the 105 or the 70 yet. So I suppose they're still being... determined, but they are a couple of lenses that I am interested in looking at. But, you know, like I've said before, the more options that we get in Sony, the more basically that it takes away from that competition that people used to say Sony doesn't have any lenses. They really can't say that anymore, apart from the really extreme long sporting lenses, and the 400 is coming out anyway shortly. And you'd even be able to use that with an adapter, and then you'd probably get 800mm or whatever out of that. And that'd probably be around 5.6 if you did that. So really, the lens bit at the moment now is just nonsense. You can use converters if you come from Canon. You can use the MC11 if you wanted to. You can now even get your lenses converted over if you have sold all your gear and you don't want to get rid of those lenses. And then if you didn't like what happened, you could pay back and then get them done back to Canon mount as well. I suppose if you're coming from the Nikon side, it's a little bit harder because you can't really use autofocus on the Nikon lenses very well. There are adapters that do it, but the ones I've used, they're not very good. So it is an issue if you're coming from the Nikon mount. But at least now, even if you are coming from Nikon, you could get into Sony and then buy the Sigma if you couldn't afford the G-mount lenses or the Sony lenses. So there's way more options now than what there used to be. And that's why I wanted to pop on this morning and just talk about this, because I was pretty excited when I read about it. So let's go to questions anyway, because I'm just curious to know what you guys have to say about this. So let me scroll back up. And let me clear that menu so we can see. Most people are just saying hi early on. What else have we got here? The panda photographer, Sigma is my girlfriend. Marcus said, I don't trust Sigma. I feel like it's best to invest in Sony glass. Well, look, Marcus, it is if you can afford it. But now we have options that are a little bit cheap. I can tell you the Sigma glass that I've used has been stunning, and it's incredibly well made. If I was going to buy a third-party lens, it probably would be Sigma. And remember, look, I'm only talking to you from my perspective of using this stuff before. I've used the 85 before, art, and I've also used the 35 1.4 art, and they were stunning. Every review I've seen of those lenses always talks about how sharp the art glass is. So I certainly trust Sigma. I definitely trust Sigma. I would definitely trust Sigma than I would more Tamron or, Samyang, something like that. It's definitely a step up above those lenses. You're paying more for it, though, like anything. The better quality things are, usually the more that you'll pay. What else have we got? Marcus said, I've got some G-Masters that I can use as weapons. He's having a bit of play around there with the panda photographer. Hi, Gerald. How are you? Good to see you here. Oreo said, I'm so getting that 105. Yeah, that 105. Let me just see if I can bring that up, because I'd love to show you guys if I can get a picture of that. Because it is an amazing looking lens. So let me see. So this is the actual lens. It is a beast. I mean, it is really a beast. I don't like carrying G-Master lenses around, but I don't know. I mean, I'd love, like I said, even if I probably had G-Master lenses, I would probably put them away and use, I wouldn't sell my normal Sony lenses, and I'd bring out the G-Master whenever I needed that 1.4 aperture or, you know, the ultimate bokeh that I would look at. But basically, if you're looking at it, it's quite funny when you see it on a smaller camera there. It is a beast. I mean, it is a massive lens. But, you know, and this is also the macro lens as well. Let me just move this over so you can see this a little bit. This is also the 70mm 2.8 macro, which I've heard is brilliant as well. That's a nice focal length actually for a macro. So, and you know, obviously they're not fly-by-wire, so you've got that benefit as well. So yeah, I'd like to try both of these lenses. I would particularly like to try this one and the 135. But particularly from everything I've read about, the bokeh on this lens is out of this world. So I would like to give it a go and just try it on a model shoot, just to see what it's like. And like I said, it might be a lens that I would bring out. There's no way I'd be lugging this around on a wedding, but it could be a lens that I would use for special occasions. I don't know if they're saying, well, there you go. It's going to be, the lens will be quite a bit cheaper than the 2200 Nikon one. And the Nikon 105 is also very nice as well. I have used that one before, and that's a beautiful lens as well. And this is going to be even cheaper. Look at the reviews of that if you can find them, because everything I've read so far is saying that it's going to be a gorgeous lens. So that is the lens if you wanted to have a look at it. I'll leave that open because I'll put that in the description down below, just so that you can see what that looks like. Let's have a look. Joe Williams said, I'm thinking of the 72.8 macro, but don't have a macro now. Yeah, and I think that would be a great macro. It's a beautiful range between being too far away or having to get too close. That's why I think that is a really nice lens. And also not having fly-by-wire is really good as well, because, you know, you can focus. I always focus manually when I'm doing macro. So to have that ability to be able to use that type of lens in your macro photography, you know, would be a really great thing. So that's also does interest me as well. The Panda photographer said the 105 is going to be a hot seller, and I think you're right, mate. I think it will be. Arthur Sense, 105 is 1.4. No, I think it's 1.8, isn't it? Let me have a look. Oh, no, it's right. Yeah, it's 1.4. Wow. Yeah, you're correct. It is a 1.4. That's going to be out of this world. That is, yeah, it's 1.4. You're right, not 1.8. That makes it even better. That's going to be incredible. That's probably why that glass is so big. What else have we got? Tony said, hey, 49 watching, only 9 likes. Thumbs up, please. Thanks, Tony. What else have we got? Angel said, hello. Hi, how are you? What else have we got? Ariel said, great news. Sigma released new firmware to fix focus issue on the 31.4 DC. Oh, they have released a new firmware, have they? Well, looking at that article, though, there is obviously something different that they're doing inside that lens. Clearly, it may be something to do with it not being attached externally like it was with the MC11 adapter. So having that ability to have it all built into that lens has to be a great thing. And I can tell you that I've used these art lenses from experience, and they are gorgeous. That they are really quite stunning lenses, so you really are getting quality at that price range. So like I said, I'm rapt that Sigma are now doing this. I've never wanted to get the adapter. I've never been into having adapters put on because it's just something else that you've got to put on. It's something else that can cause issues later on down the track, you know, with the electronic parts that attach to each other. Anything like that can be broken. So not having that interests me way more than using something like an MC11 adapter. And the beauty is if you buy that lens, well, you're not having to buy the adapter separately now anyway, so you're getting that adapter built in for nothing anyway. So, yeah, there we go. What else have we got? Angel said, David, do you think I should sell my 118 to 105 crop? I've been using my A7 III. Well, not if you're just doing video. That's still going to be a great lens, Angel, if you're doing video. And I'll probably use my 18 to 105. I do use that 18, to 105 on my A7R II and the A9 when I'm shooting super 35mm mode. And even on the A7 III, you could use that on there as well. If you find that you're going to go to completely full frame, you may be better to sell it, yes. The issue is that there was an advantage going Super 35 with the A7R II. You definitely got a better look, and I think it's even on the A7R III as well. You get a little bit of a better look in Super 35 than you do in full frame for video. So now with the A7 III and the A9, there's no difference if you're shooting Super 35 or if you're shooting full frame. The only thing is you go Super 35 if you want to grab that extra reach. So if you are definitely going to say get the A7 III and you're not interested in say shooting Super 35 anymore, because there is really no advantage really in the A7 III or the A9, you may be better to sell that if you're getting rid of your A6 500 or whatever you're using, and then buy something like the 24 to 105, something like that. But it's still a great lens, and I'm going to keep mine because I'm not going to sell my A6 500. I'm going to keep it for that. It's great on a gimbal as well. Yeah, Angel said for video. So yeah, and like I said, Angel, if you're only doing Super 35 mode, no, keep it because you could use that on that camera. Gerald said, I will take advantage of the Sigma changing the mount of my Sigma Art 20mm 1.4 to the new native E-mount with the new algorithms. Also converting my Sigma Contemporary 150 to 600 5.6. See, and what a great thing this is, Gerald, that you can do that now. That they're really, obviously Sigma are really seeing that Sony are going to be massive in the marketplace, and they're just doing more and more and more that if you were going to switch. Again, this is going to make Canon shooters keep thinking about it, and I'm seeing more and more people discussing, should I switch over from Canon to Sony? And you know what, I always used to say, oh, but now I'm really starting to think that yes, you should. Yeah, Arthur said keep it for video. Yeah, and I do think if you're only doing video, yes, keep it. What else have we got? The Panda photographer said Canon just released a statement that now they will mainly focus on mirrorless cameras in the future. Yeah, but they're still going to be behind, I think, mate. I mean, I don't think whatever they release at this stage can compete with the A7 III. I will be very surprised if what Canon release can. And then Sony obviously are already working on their next camera already. Who knows what that's going to be? Who knows what the A7S III or whatever that camera is going to be that comes out? Canon should have done this 2 years ago, and now they're panicking because they can see the writing on the wall, and that's the problem for Canon at the moment. And Nikon, I think they've left it too late. What else have we got? David Johnson said, the $1 million question is how much will it cost them to convert the Sigma for Canon lenses, and what is the turnaround time? Yeah, and we'll have to wait and see about that, David. I'm not sure what sort of timeline that will be, but still, if you've definitely moved over to Canon, to Sony, and you don't want to get rid of that Canon glass, because remember, something like the 2470, if you read Tony Northrop's, if you watch his reviews, and he did a fairly good test on that lens, he was actually saying, and I did look at the review and it did look better, but if you were looking at that and you were after the ultimate sharpness, the 2470 Canon lens is better than the G Master 2470. So if you can put that converter on there and it doesn't cost too much to do it, I don't think they probably would charge you too much, because if they did, no one would be doing it. But anyway, it's an interesting scenario that you can just convert it. If you definitely changed over and you thought, well, I'm just abandoning Canon, and I do want the full advantage of having that adapter built in, well, then you can do it. And remember too that if you're using multiple lenses and multiple cameras, then you've got to buy multiple adapters, and that adds up because those MC11 adapters aren't cheap. So yeah. Gerald said, I have owned 3 Sigma Art lenses and their image quality is equal or better to my G Master lenses. Yeah, I know. And that's what I've said to people on here, that the Art lenses are superb. And some of you may not have used them. I have, and they are always superb. You can't fault them. The build quality is amazing. And the price is reasonable. It's still not cheap, but it's reasonable if you can say comparing it to G Master. The good thing about this is perhaps Sony may bring down their G Master prices once these are all starting to hit the marketplace. So we can hope that that's the case too. Angel said, I have the Samyang AF 14mm 3550 millimeter. You think I should sell it for the new Sigmas? Well, no, not if you're happy with them, no. And I'm not saying for you to go and do that. I'm just saying that if you haven't got them, I would definitely get the Sigma lenses, or perhaps the next lens that you get, like if you were after an 85 or something like that, well, then I'd get the Sony one, actually, the 85 1.8. But if you were, say, after a 135, I would be recommending to go and get the Sigma. If you're after that macro, I could recommend getting the 70mm macro. I wouldn't, if you're happy with those lenses, Angel, I wouldn't be changing because you're going to lose money when you actually sell them. So that would be something you'd really have to, think about doing. But if you haven't got those lenses, I would definitely think about getting Sigma if you're not going to get Sony. Susie is lonely. She's over there sitting now. I know I haven't given Susie much attention lately, have I? Poor Susie. Gerald said, I talked to Sigma and the lens conversion is going to be less than 200. Well, there you go. So that's less basically than what I would be paying for the MC11 adapter. So it's not bad at all if that's the case. SRM Media says, does anyone here do real estate video walkthrough vids? If so, which lens do you use? Suggest I'd use the 16 to 35, but that's what I'd be using if when I do video for real estate and stuff like that. That's the lens that I'm using, is the 16 to 35, and I'm using the f4 version, and that works well for me. But you do need something that's wide. Tony said, wait until people get their Sigmas. You never know, they may stink. And you're right, wait until the reviews come out. That's what you've got to wait for. Painter Photographer said, Sigma is going to be Sony's new best friend, and this was planned. I knew this was going to happen. And I've been saying this for a year now. Tony Pass said, reviews saying new Comlight Nikon to Sony FE working well. Yeah, I haven't used the new one. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it does. I can't comment until I see how that actually works myself. And sometimes I just don't trust reviews, because reviews sometimes can be paid and you just don't know whether they're being paid to do those reviews. I'd like to give it a go myself and then, give an honest opinion about how that actually went. But it will be interesting to see how it goes. David said, interesting, under $200, I would definitely be interested. The Panda Photographer said, I use Sigma A mount and the 135 1.4 and the 18 to 35 works really well, and do recommend and trust Sigma. Yeah, the 18 to 35 is used for an awful lot of videographers on the GH5. A lot of them are using that, the 1.8, and it's a stunning lens. I've heard so many people say that they love that for video. Angel said, I'm very happy with the Samyang AF. That's why I'm saying I wouldn't sell it at this stage if you're happy with it. But I certainly, if I was buying a new lens, I'd be getting Sigma, if you rather than Samyang or those sort of lenses. What else? How about the 135? Yes, well, I'd love to try that, Angel. I'd love that. That's probably the most perfect focal length for portraits. It's beautiful compression on the face. It gives a stunning look. You know, it gives that lovely slim type look on the face, and you'll get lovely compression with the 1.8 as well. Bokeh in the background. I love my 85, but as a real lens to come out and bring the ultimate for portraits, the 135 is it. That's the most perfect portrait focal length that you can shoot with. 4-pound lens, yeah, I'm not sure about the weight. They won't be light, that's for sure. I'm Brown says the Sigma 20mm 1.4 looks very intriguing. Yeah, and lovely to shoot wide open at that range. Tony, I agree with you. Gerald said, saw Sigma CEO with his 105mm lens and the tripod collar is removable. Oh, okay. Let's have a look. Briar said, I understand it's full frame versus ASP X-Trans. Are you talking about Fuji there? With the various advantages of each. Yeah, and it depends. Some people are happy just with the X-Trans APS-C type format. I mean, I'm comfortable shooting with APS-C. I still will always go full frame though if I'm after the ultimate quality, for that separation of the background. Remember, you're also dealing with, you can never get the same separation in bokeh and things like that, you know, the depth of field you just can't get with APS-C. You also can't get the same noise reduction either. I mean, they're always going to be noisier than what you'll get with a full frame camera. So for me, I'm not bagging at all APS-C. I've been so happy with my A6500 and I've used that, and I'm even happy with the GH5 for what it gives me. But will I use that in a wedding? Would I use it all the time? No, I'll be using full frame. Fire Garden says, I love my Sigma glass. The colour and sharpness are lovely. I just feel the AF lets me down when I need it most. I really hope the latest update and new E-mount versions improve that consistency. Yeah, and that's a thing that we're going to have to wait and see how well that actually works with this update. So it's going to be interesting. I'm sure when they start to develop the really true native lenses though, well, that's not going to be an issue, and that's a matter of time. But let's wait and see anyway what these are like when they come out. Am I suggesting you go out and buy it now before you see a review? No. I'm saying wait and see. It won't be long till they're out. Wait and see what they're like when real world reviews come out. Go and hire one and then just see if you think it fits your needs. So it's going to be an interesting scenario. Either way, it's still going to be a great thing. What else have we got? Marcus said, I'm looking to buy the 70-200 next month to use for events. I'm at the crossroads because I'm actually considering the 105 f1.4. Would it be wise to just get the 70-200 f4 and 105, or 70-200 GM? Well, if that was me and I was doing that, I'd be getting the 70-200 f4 and the 105. That's what I'd be getting if I was shooting, if I had the money to do that. Yep, definitely. I wouldn't be getting the 70-200 GM. I'd get the 105 f1.4. Like I said, that will probably be a nicer range. It'll give you that beautiful 1.4 depth of field. So that's what I'd be personally getting. Some people, you're going to need something wider though. I'm hoping you've got something wider there, like a 35. Remember, most of my lenses that I'm using is the 35 and the 85. And then I occasionally get out the 70-200 f4 when I need it for you know, shooting something that's a long way away, or to get that compression. The 70-200 f4 is a really beautiful lens, and I think people just don't realize how nice that lens actually is. I'm really happy with it, really happy. It's sharp, it gives you beautiful depth of field, but yeah, the 105 would also be stunning. So I'd probably go for that if I had the choice between those two. Jess said, just join the conversation. What do you think about the Tamron 28-75? I haven't seen that yet. Jess, it's not really a lens that interests me anymore. I've got the 24-70. I very rarely ever use it. I don't really need that focal length anymore. I'm more comfortable shooting with the 35 and, well, if I had to, the 55mm 1.8 that I've got and the 85 Batis. That gives me that range, and I do love using the primes. Once you start using primes and you're used to the weight of them and just the feel of them and the look, it's very hard to go back, for me to go back to using zooms anymore. And I really do love that prime look. And I just love the way they feel on the camera. I don't know, there's just something about it. So I can't comment about how that is. I've heard they're saying it's going to be a really nice lens. But it's certainly not a lens that I'd be interested in buying. I'm not interested in that focal length at all anymore. Stacy said, Canon can always rebrand themselves as a lens manufacturer for Sony. Yeah, they could. That's interesting. Hi, Michael. Good to see you in here. He was only in for a second and then he's got to go. That's funny. Tino said, hi David, I've got an A7R III. Is it worth selling it for the A7 III since the A7 III has an AA filter? No. It depends what you're shooting. If you've got the A7R III and you're doing more landscapes or architecture, or you're doing more studio type work, I definitely wouldn't be selling the A7R III. If you're doing more generalist type work, where you're doing everything, like a bit of studio work, going outside, doing portraits, shooting an awful lot of video, then you could say, yes, well then I'm going to sell it and get the A7 III. But if you've got the A7R III, I wouldn't be selling it. I'd be trying to save up and get the A7 III as a second body for that. You're going to lose money on that now if you sell that. And the A7R III is still a beautiful camera. I mean, yeah, I don't think I'd be selling it because you're going to lose too much money. When can Sony implement focus stacking bracketing? I don't know. I wish they would. I mean, I've got that in my GH5 and love it. Gerald said Sigma says the conversion turnaround is 2 weeks. Oh, okay, interesting. They go back to Sigma in Japan for conversion. Wow. SRM Media said, my issue before buying the A7 III, I need it for a gimbal, crane, A6500 or A7 III. Well, I'm keeping my A6500 for the gimbal because I like that weight. The issue for me is it gets heavy. Now remember, I'm shooting Fusion, so I'm doing both. So I'm shooting stills and video at the same time, so I don't want to be holding two sort of heavier cameras. So I'll keep the A6500 for on the gimbal. If you can only have one though, I would buy the A7 III. That will still work fine on a gimbal. I've used my A9 on a gimbal. I did that when I went to Thailand recently and it was fine. Plus, the A7 III is going to be even better for autofocusing than what the A6500 is. So, yeah, it's a bit of a decision. If you can only afford one camera or only one camera, I'll get the A7 III. Yeah, Michael, that's a good lens, actually, 12 to 24. Great. Yeah, I forgot about that one. That's a really good lens, actually. Good point. What else have we got? Brio said, David, read my question. Didn't read my question, was so hopeful. Oh, well. Oh, what was it, Brias? Let me go back. I'm just seeing if I can find it. Oh, there we go. So, since you appreciate having lighter, smaller gear, please help. I'm ready to buy the Sony A7 III or a Fuji X-T20. Really want the latest, greatest Sony, but loving the size and lens selection of the Fuji. Yeah, look, it's hard. I can tell you, though, that the A7 III is definitely a step up than anything Fuji are offering at this stage. And I'm only sort of comparing it to, even, say, with the A6500 to the A9 or cameras. There is still a difference if you're shooting for ultimate sort of quality and depth of field and noise and things like that. The A7 III is still not going to be a heavy camera, so I definitely would still be going for that. To be honest, I thought the XH1 was a fantastic camera until Sony announced the A7 III, and that really blew that out of the marketplace. So if I was seriously thinking about it, I would get the A7 III over the Fuji X-T20. But that's just an honest opinion from me. Fuji diehards are going to say the opposite though, but I really don't think you can beat that full frame look. Yeah, and even though you've said non-professional, I just want a nice camera. It's everything else that is offered in that Sony camera. The video is incredible. The autofocus is incredible. It's things like the noise is basically as good as the A7 S2. So you're getting an incredible camera there for that price, Bryce. So yeah, I'd definitely get the A7 III. I don't think you'd regret buying, and he said here, will he regret it? No, you probably wouldn't regret it, but I think the A7 III is just a far better overall camera. Gerald Williams said, the Sigma Art 20 1.4 is super, you will love it. Adam Baker said, I just bought the A7 III considering Sigma Sony glass with the MC11, but want to be sure the AF and IAF works, and with the new built-in MC11s, they're going to be any different to the new ones now. Well, basically they're saying it is going to be better than that, Adam, but wait, before you buy that glass, wait for it to be reviewed, because you just don't know until they're reviewed. But I'd wait and see. You could always just have a lens in the meantime, like one of the Sony, like the Sony 55. If you wanted to get that lens, you can never go wrong with buying that lens. You can also get the 35 f2.8, which I love as well. I haven't got those here now, I've put them all away. But I'd probably wait a little bit just to see how those reviews are going. But I do definitely think if they're saying they're going to be better than what the MC11 is, I'm hoping that they actually work pretty well. Richard's just come on. Hi, Richard. How are you? David said, Bryce, have you tried either the T2 or the A7R3 to get an idea of the feel for it? Hi, Phono Mike. How are you? Good to see you in here. Angel said, I used to own the Sigma 35 with the MC11 and the autofocus was too slow. That's why I switched to Samyang 35 native mount. What do you think with the new Sigma Sony mount? Well, they're saying it will be better, but like I said, we haven't tried that yet. I'm just reporting that it's exciting what they're saying, but I definitely would be waiting first to see what they're saying about that. But having said that, the build quality of the Sigma is better than what the Samyang is. I mean, the glass is just better, but you know, we're going to have to wait and see what the focusing is like. Adam said, considering the 70-200 f4, the Canon 2.8 or Canon 2.8, f4 or the 70-200 GM2 heavy, also the Batis 135 is 500 down to 1.5. Yeah, I know they've had to drop that. It's amazing what competition does, isn't it? I love the 70-200 f4. I adore that lens, and it's probably one of the most, well, it's really the only zoom lens now that I use with the 16-35 f4. F4 is not an issue on these cameras now because you can raise the ISO up so much that it really isn't an issue unless you're in really dark conditions. But the second I'm moving into dark conditions, I'm using my primes anyway, the 1.4 prime, so it's not really an issue. So if it was my perspective here, I'd be saying get the 70-200 f4, Adam, if that's too heavy. Or the 135 Batis is also a beautiful lens, but you're limited at 2.8 for that. I still think that Batis is a little bit too expensive. Adam said, Batis 135, just ordered the 85 1.8 and was going to go with the Batis, but for $550 and DxO marks, I was told I couldn't go wrong. Yeah, the 135, I mean, it would be a beautiful lens, but if you haven't got a good 35, I'd be getting a good 35 before you get those lenses, because 135 and 85 are not that far away. You really need something more wider. So it'd be interesting to see what you're shooting with the wide end before you could say that. Photomeek said, agreed, love primes, move them feet and bend them knees. I know, I agree with you. You just feel more, I just feel like I'm more into the shoot, and it's just more enjoyable to shoot with that. And I really do like doing it. And I really love the feel of primes and how they look. What else? Reese Washi said, I'm thinking of getting the 24-105 for video. Yeah, that'll be a beautiful lens. It seems to be stunning from all the reviews I've seen of it. Photo Mike said, he's just answering a question. What's that saying, Adam? Let me show them. Marcus said, Photo Mike, when is your switching to Sony? I don't think he's going to. He's happy shooting with his Nikon stuff. Just coming back because it's scrolled to the bottom. Where are we? He's crashed it. He's crashed his Maverick Air. I love it. Was it broken? Did it break? That's why I'm not buying one. I know I crashed one as well and broke mine. I broke my Phantom. Photomeek says, when is your... yeah, I'm switching to Sony. Yeah. So Adam says, I own the 16-35 f4, the Zeiss 2470 f4, Zeiss 35 2.8. Just got the 85 1.8. Should I go with the 70-200 f4 or the Canon 135? Canon 70-200 f4 or the Canon or 135 Batis. Okay, well, looking at that range that you've already got the 85. I'd probably get, if I was in that range and that's all you could get, I'd get the 70-200 f4 because you haven't got anything with a real long reach that you need. So I'd probably get the 70-200 f4 if that was me. That's what I'd be getting anyway. Gerald said, I'm keeping my A7R III and buying the A7 III for events and weddings and sports for its smaller size and editing and post-processing. I know that camera is going to be incredible as a backup camera to, say, the A7R III or the A9. Photo Mike said, what video should I do first? DJI Maverick Air versus the Maverick Pro or how I lost my drone in the... No, do how you lost the drone, mate. I'd like to see that too because it'd be pretty funny. Adam said, sounds like people say Sigma converters don't work the best in AF, fast, low light situations. Does the 70-200 f4 Sony? No. Oh, it will do 10 frames per second. It won't do 20 though. It does something like 15, I think. But it will do 10. Yes, I'm sure it will because it does 20 on the, it does 15 on the Sony website. When I use it, it's doing about 15. I don't think it does 20 though. Adam Baker would be faster than the 135 Batis f2.8. Is that saying the Sony? No, the Sony 70-200. No, it won't be faster because it's not. It's an f4. But the problem is you haven't got that long reach though, Adam. So you need something with that long reach for sports. Simon said, I pre-ordered the A7 III with kit lens, 2870, going to Kenya Safari in June. Not sure if I should get the 70-200 or the 100-400. 100-400, definitely. If you can afford the 100-400, that's the one I'd be getting. That's a much better lens for something like a Safari, Simon. Bryce said thank you. Yeah, no worries. I'm sorry I didn't see your question first up. Brown said, I have the Sigma 16 1.4 and autofocus isn't too bad. That's a good lens too. I've seen results from that. It is quite good. What else have we got? Terry's here. Hi, Terry. Pedro said, do you think that Canon and Nikon can launch better full-frame mirrorless cameras, 4K 30 frames per second for 2000? Well, they're going to have to. I mean, if they can't release a camera that's going to compete with the A7 III, they're gone. They've got to compete with it, but I can't see that camera being anywhere near as good as what Sony have done. Remember, you're dealing with Sony that now have had, what, 4 versions of these cameras before the A7 III was released, so they've had that step up each time. I can't see a company just coming out of nowhere and then releasing a camera that's going to compete with it. But wait, we'll have to wait and see, but my prediction is no. I don't think they will. What else have we got? Anyone already received their A7 IIIs? There's plenty in Europe that's already received it, Jonathan. The Panda photographer said Samsung is going to get better at their glass soon. They will be broadcasting back in the 70s and work on glass in the 70s, so give them time to get better. Everyone starts somewhere. Oh, so you're saying that Samyang will get better? Yes, well, they probably will. Rui's here. Good afternoon. What other ones? I'm going to hop off soon because I need to go and get a coffee, guys. David, do you think I should sell my 2 A7 IIs for another A7 III? Yes. I'd get rid of it while you can. If you definitely need 2 cameras, though, you're going to have to make a decision. So you can't do, say, weddings and only have one camera. You have to have a backup. So as long as you have a backup, definitely I would be selling the A7 IIs. I sell both of my A7 IIs. When you look at what the new cameras are, they blow the A7 II out of the water. So yes, I would if you can. Adam said, I won a A7S contest years ago, won Zeiss 16 to 35. Oh, so you won all those. Wow. So I got some glass. I just don't have the long range. Yeah, that's why I probably would get the 7200 f4. Oreo said, the 3 reasons I sold my A6 500, it basically doubles my upcoming Mark III. Today, it still holds decent aftermarket value. You say in the A6 500, yeah, the successor A6 700 will surely have a flip-out screen and 4K 60. It is a tough decision. If you really can't afford cameras, see, I'm a little bit different because I'm in a business and I can justify selling gear. And even then, I have to be careful that I don't go ridiculous. But and I have to have a certain amount of time before I can write things off. But if you are, say, not running in a business situation, you do have to try and get rid of the gear before it loses too much value. That's why I've seen so many A6 500s are being sold now, because I think people are trying to cash out on them before they lose their value too much. So you would have to make a decision if you're thinking about it. If you're even thinking about it, I will probably do it. If you're not sure, then wait. But if you are thinking about you're going to do it soon, I'd do it now. Adam said, I'll trade you my new A7 III for your old A7R3. Adam said, yep, def going to get the 7200 f4. Yep, it's a great lens. I love using it. Adam said, though people showing videos with new firmware for adapters plus Canon like Jason Lanier shooting portraits with IAF and continuous IAF. Yeah, and they do work well with adapters. The only thing is they don't work as well in video, Adam. So it's fine with Jason showing that for stills, but if you looked at it with video, they don't track very well. So that's the sort of thing that you have to think about. And do you want to be using adapters? That's another thing that you've got to think about as well. I personally don't want to do that. So I'm happier shooting things where everything's all in one, where you're going to have less problems. So yeah, so that's just the way I feel about that situation. If you want the ultimate quality, either way, you have to go by Sony. If you want the best in video and stills, well, obviously you can't go past Sony lenses because you know that they're fully designed for the whole system and they'll work beautifully for everything that you do. But clearly these other manufacturers are getting better and better and better. Like I said, the Canons are working really well with the MC11 adapter at the moment for photography, but they do suck a little bit in video. They're nowhere near as good if you're dealing with video. How's Samyang 35mm with the autofocus? Is it loud? Well, the ones I've used have been a bit noisier than the Sony, definitely. Yeah, so that's another issue as well. All right, guys, well, I'm going to go because I've got to go and get a morning coffee. It's, what is it, 11:53 here. So please, anyway, if you're not in the chat, leave your questions down below because I'd love to get you in that discussion there where we can go over a few things. Let me know what you think about these Sigma adapters. Don't forget to join our Facebook page, the Photography and Videography group. I've put that link down below. So join us there too. We've got competitions running. There's all other things going in that site now and it's really starting to take off. Apart from that, I'll see you all again soon in the next video. I was only going to pop on for a few minutes this morning and I've probably been on for nearly an hour. You guys are shocking. Anyway, catch you guys. Have a great day. See you all again soon. Bye for now.